Well, hello, and welcome to the Figge Art Museum's virtual Thursdays at the Figge series. My name is Melissa Moore, and I'm Director of Education here at the Figge, and I'm very happy you could join us tonight. For the time being, we're hosting these virtual programs nearly every Thursday evening, so please check out the Figge's calendar on our website for the topics and to register. And we're able to offer these programs at no cost to you, thanks to the generous sponsorship provided by Chris and Mary Rayburn. Chris and Mary, thank you so much. While these programs are free to watch, I do encourage you to consider becoming a Figge member. Your support as a member really does help us continue to fulfill our mission, which is to bring art and people together, even during times like now when we can't be together in person. So a quick note about tonight. If you have any questions during the program, please enter them into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them as we can. So tonight, it is my great pleasure to introduce a special program offered by one of our favorite museum partners, the Putnam Museum and Science Center, located right here in Davenport, Iowa. Tonight, we're going to hear from the Putnam's Curator of History and Anthropology, Christina Kastell, as she introduces the Putnam special exhibition, Faces of the Past, offered in conjunction with the Figge's exhibition, For America, 200 Years of Painting from the National Academy of Design, which is on display at the Figge through May 16th. Faces of the Past over at the Putnam is an original Putnam exhibit that explores portraiture around the world and across time as a reflection of self-identity, popular culture, mythology, and ritual. Christina, thank you so much for joining us tonight and for presenting this program. With that, I'm going to turn things over to you.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here today and to be offering this program to your audience. And I want to thank the Figge also for asking me to give this program. I'm really excited to do this. This was such a great opportunity for the Putnam Museum. We were so happy to be able to do this cooperative exhibit in partnership with the Figge Art Museum. When the Figge first started talking about this and this project that they had with the For America exhibit, and we're looking for partners in our community, we decided that we wanted to be a partner on this. But what were we going to do? So in looking through the book for the For America exhibit, I realized that it features a large number of portraits from American artists. And that got me started thinking about, well, we've got this collection from around the world, actually from every continent of the world, excepting Antarctica. And the only reason we don't have anything from there is because there's not a permanent population living down there. I still have high hopes that we'll get a piece of garment or equipment from an explorer down in Antarctica, but we don't have it yet. So I still can't say every continent. So every continent except Antarctica. So in looking at what we had in our collection, it occurred to me that we had a lot of ethnographic objects that have portraits on them, self-portraits and portraits of deities, ancestors, etc. And wouldn't it be interesting to look at how these other cultures view portraiture and view themselves? And plus, I thought the exhibit would be super visually appealing. What's not to like? I loved it. So we were so happy to join with the Figge Art Museum in this project. Now, the first faces we're going to look at are ancient Egyptian faces. Big surprise. That's one of the Putnam Museum's most popular exhibits, is our Egyptian exhibit. So we're looking at, on the left side, the 30th dynasty face of the female mummy that is unwrapped in the Putnam Museum Gallery. That female mummy came from B.J. Palmer. It entered our museum collection in 1965. It was a bequest in his will that mummy come to the museum. And it was unwrapped at the Putnam Museum. Well, guess what? We don't do unwrapping anymore. Now with CT scans and X-rays and tests like that, you don't have to unwrap mummies anymore. You can do facial reconstructions on a wrapped mummy just by using your MRI and or CT and X-ray results. But this one was unwrapped, so you can see the face of the woman who was originally wrapped up underneath this funerary mask that you're seeing. And quite honestly, it shouldn't look anything like that. Now, why is that? because the ancient Egyptians felt that the way you were depicted with your burial was how you would be in the afterlife. So why would you put a facial mask that looked like you on it if you were older or infirm, or if you had smallpox in your life and had scars on your face? Why would you put those on your funerary mask? And they didn't. They made their portraits of themselves as beautiful as possible. So that's the way that they would appear in the afterlife. On the right side, you're seeing a face that was carved and part of a coffin was removed from a coffin or fell off of a coffin. We don't really know which, but that came into the museum collection, and it represents, again, a beautiful woman, probably from the 21st dynasty. These are both people who were alive, and they're both portraits, although idealized, but they're still portraits of individuals. So when you're looking at these two faces, you're looking into the faces of women who lived, in the case of the 21st dynasty, 3,000 years ago, which to me is just astonishing. So that's how the ancient Egyptians created their artwork, is to make themselves beautiful, because that's how they wanted to appear in the afterlife. And you'll see also there's lots of other symbolic things on Egyptian funerary objects as well too. On the mask on the left, you see a scarab beetle. Pretty name. It's actually a dung beetle, because what does it do? It goes out into the desert and it gathers up balls of poop, rolls them up into a ball, and then it puts its eggs in there. So that's why they're dung beetles. But to the ancient Egyptian, the beetles rolling those balls of poop across the desert floor reminded them of the sun rolling across the sky. So the scarab beetle to them became a deity. That's how the sun moved across the sky, was a dung beetle moved it. So you get that, it's sort of like an eternal theme in Egypt, the sun's movement, because it rises and sets every day eternally, rises again and sets again. And so it's that cycle of life that we see in agrarian societies of people who are growing plants, the spring and winter seasonal type events. So that's what you get when you're looking at portraits and faces of ancient Egypt. Now let's take a look at some of the other ancient faces. These are from the classical world. On the left side, you see the mask of Agamemnon. Yes, that's part of our collection, but it's a reproduction, darn it. The real mask of Agamemnon was excavated in the 1800s by Heinrich Schliemann, one of my favorite of the old archaeologists. And he was excavated in Mycenae in Greece, one of the Mycenaean kings, Heinrich Schliemann believed. And if that would have been the case, it would date to about 1500 BCE, which is before the Common Era. To be inclusive these days, we try not to use BC and AD, especially when talking about cultures that have no connection to the Christian faith. So BCE, before the Common Era, is when this mask was made, 1500. And you can see it's a mustached man with a little, right below his lower lip, there's a little triangular beard there, and then this big mane of hair. Heinrich Schliemann, when he found this in Mycenae, believed that it was Agamemnon. And if you're familiar with classical literature, the Iliad and the Odyssey, you'll recognize that name as one of the Greek kings who went to Troy and went to battle there in Troy. When Heinrich Schliemann found this, he thought, surely that must be the greatest of all kings, because it was the only whole facial mask there, and it was so beautifully executed. So he said, in fact, he called the day he found that, well, didn't call, he sent a telegram to Egypt, to Greece, in Athens, the head of antiquities, and he said, I have looked into the face of Agamemnon. He was that excited about it, that he was able to make this huge statement. Now, as it turns out, is it really Agamemnon? Probably not. There was no evidence to suggest that that this was Agamemnon, the ancient king of Mycenae. However, it's not a bad story. That's part of the reason why I like Heinrich Schliemann so well, is because he is such a raconteur, such a good storyteller. He's the one who excavated Troy. He was so sure that he knew where Troy was. And in fact, he did know where it was, but he dug right through it. The Troy from the time period that he was looking for, the Trojan War time period, he thought surely must have lots and lots of gold ornaments and things like that. And the real Troy really wasn't that rich. And so he dug right through Troy down to the next level, which had a lot of gold artifacts in it. And in fact, there's a classic photograph of Heinrich Schliemann's wife wearing all that gold jewelry. He's my favorite. He is quite the character. So I, of course, had to include this artifact in the exhibit of the ancient faces, as well as in this program too, because Heinrich is such an interesting character, let alone the fact that this mask is really quite beautiful. You know, there's also been a little bit of talk lately in the archaeology world that it might be a fake, because Heinrich Schliemann, being the showman that he was, may have actually commissioned this piece to be made so that he could salt the site and find this fabulous object, because he was known as finding fabulous pieces. So did that really happen? We don't know, but it's a nice story too. On the right side, you see a Roman bust. We don't really know who it's depicting. When we had somebody come and look at it in the 60s, they thought that it was taken off of a sarcophagus. And it could be just a scholar or one of the deities. They didn't really know for sure, but it's certainly an interesting looking gentleman. And with the Greeks and the Romans, you get some differing ideas. The Greek portraits are very classically beautiful, very idealized, but the Romans around 1 AD went into this phase where they liked to do a lot of realism in their portraiture. So usually when you're looking at a Roman portrait, what you see is what you get, warts and all. And literally, there have been some portraits done of Roman senators from the 1st century BC, AD, pardon me, or see, I'm getting mixed up with my own BC and AD. Common Era, CE, 1st century CE, which the senator has several warts on his face, and he's depicted like that. Now, if he were ancient Egyptian, he'd be born into the afterlife with those warts. So he certainly probably would have liked that, but with realism, they included things like that. Now let's go on to the next set of faces, and these are the faces from ancient Peru. Peru was settled in that same wave of migration that settled all of North and South America. So people were coming from Eastern Asia across the land bridge into this completely empty of human beings set of 2 continents. So North and South America were sitting here. There were no humans living here at that time because they were completely cut off from the rest of the world until the Ice Age. And all that water was taken up by the glaciers, and the ocean levels dropped, allowing this land bridge to be open so that people could just walk right across it into this new North and South American continents. Now, did they know they were settling new continents? Absolutely not. They were following the mammoth and mastodon, the big animals. The earliest settlers in this country were hunting the megafauna, the big animals that actually died out at the end of the Ice Age. They didn't make it because they were too specialized to survive in an Ice Age, and they couldn't make it when the Ice Age ended. So Unfortunately for the human beings who crossed into the New World, we are very easily changeable in what we do. So we were able to make it through the Ice Age and modify the way that we hunted and gathered. We started eating different foods instead of eating the mammoth and the mastodon. We started eating bison and deer and the smaller mammals and birds and fish. So we changed our life ways, but some of those large animals were not able to do that. So the Peruvians came through with that wave of people across the land bridge. And instead of coming east into the United States, where many of the other native North and South America, well, North Americans did, they kept going south and moved through Mexico, across the Panama Isthmus there, and into South America, continuing south to Peru. In Peru, they set up societies, hunting and gathering originally based off of llamas, because llamas were pack animals. Having pack animals allowed these people to gain more prosperity, and with more prosperity, you get more civilization, more complex civilization. So that by 200 BCE, the Nazca civilization was prospering down on the desert plain in Peru. You may have heard of the Nazca Lines. In fact, they used to make quite a bit out of them because they were believed that you could only see them in whole from the sky. So that, of course, brought about a whole bunch of theories about aliens and whether they were worshiping the ancient aliens from the sky, and that these pictures were made to please them. But if you believe that your deity, whoever they may be, lives in the skies or lives above you and a plane above you, then you might make marks on the ground that would be of interest to your deities. So these ancient Nazcas set themselves up on these plains and had a complex civilization, had enough wealth that they could make really cool pottery. And this first two pieces you see here, the one on the top is an individual, I always like to call him the pizza eater, because doesn't he look like he's eating a piece of pizza the backwards way, starting with the crust first? Must have been stuffed crust, maybe. Actually, he's a panpipe player. He's playing a panpipe music. But we get a look at his face, and we can see what he would have looked like. He's got his face painting around his eyes. He's got these eyes that have stripes coming down from them, almost like a bird's eyes. You know, a lot of times birds have those heavy markings around their eyes, and it looks like that's kind of what that is imitating. And he's got a little spare mustache above his mouth on his upper lip. So we're looking at this face of this individual, and there are some pieces of it that are probably very realistic. However, the face is just a plain round shape. The eyes are just oval shapes. So that there's a lot about it too that's not true to life. It's not how that individual would have looked like if we could have seen him. Likewise, the gentleman on the bottom has that same little mustache. And in this case, he's got a little beard under his mouth as well too. And he's also got painting underneath his eyes. So that gives you a lot of information about who this individual was and how the people would have looked in ancient Peru at that time. They painted their faces and they wore little mustaches. Complex headdresses. On the gentleman on the bottom is wearing some sort of a striped headdress. So we get a little feeling of the type of clothing they wear even. And then we move on to the requie. And again, we're seeing a face that's maybe a little bit more individualistic here, a little bit more human looking. We get a better idea of what the nose looks like, how wide the mouth is, and we get a look at his facial tattooing. Beneath his eyes, you'll see some triangular shapes that would have been the tattoos that he had on his face. So in looking at this individual, again, you know that he's a person who had facial tattoos. probably a realistic piece. He's sitting there holding a cup, something a normal person would do. And in his ears are great big round ear spools. You know, interestingly enough, we still see these some days now in the younger generation, or if you younger generation are listening, that would be you guys, with the extended earlobes that you get when you stick those big discs in your ears. So if you think that that's a new fashion, a new trend, you're wrong. It goes back 2,000 years or more to the ancient South Americans and the ancient Mesoamericans. The next piece that you look at is Chimu, and it's a human wearing a human-looking individual wearing a helmet-type headdress, and he's surrounded by what is probably ears of corn. And he sort of has fangs. That leads me to believe that he's likely a deity. One of the favorite deities in South American was a feline deity, not your usual house cat. This would have been the panthers and the spotted cats that they had down there that were considered deities. And on the right, you see an Inca man. When the first Europeans got to South America, it was the Incans who were in power with their ceremonial center at Machu Picchu, far back in the mountains. In fact, that's where they retreated when battling the Europeans, and the Europeans basically beat them back to this mountain stronghold, which is still there. Fortunately, they never really conquered the mountain stronghold, so you can still see the structures there. This individual, you can also see his face, and to me, it's a very individualistic face. Tattoos around the eyes, tattoos across the upper cheeks, and even his right cheek is bulging out there on the side. Now, why is that? Because he was chewing on a hallucinogenic type of herb that the Incas used to chew on. They'd stick it in their cheek like chewing tobacco and chew on it during the day, and it was, you know, it wasn't horribly hallucinogenic. You could get through your day with no problems, no difficulties while you had that stuff in your mouth, but it was just something that was consistently done by the men of that time period. So here are these faces from South America, from Peru, in fact. Varied, different, but a lot similar, a lot of facial tattooing on all of these individuals. So let's move on to North America. This is prehistoric North America, the Mississippian population. These were the people who lived on the Mississippi River when the Europeans first got to North America, to the Mississippi River area. And these people made burial mounds. And the whole society was a very complex society. The largest city center was at Cahokia, down near St. Louis, Illinois. So this large city center was a tribute center, and many of the small villages would pay tribute there to this center, which is why you find a pyramid down there that rivals the size of the pyramids in ancient Egypt. They say that the footprint of the large mound down there, Monk's Mound at Cahokia, is larger than the footprint of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. So that's the type of civilization that had developed here in North America, and that was based on corn agriculture. Those of you who are farmers or have had experience with working with farmers understand that corn is huge crop money. So, and they found that the same way back in the Mississippian times too. Again, when you get lots of surplus of foods, you can specialize, and you can have artists who create beautiful works of art. And that's what I would consider these pieces of pottery to be. Were they made as artworks to be admired in a gallery? No, they weren't. They were made for specific purposes, usually to placate a god, to express riches, or in the case of the man on the left side, to memorialize an individual who was dead. You'll notice that his lips are pulled back and his teeth are bared. We call that rictus, a rictus smile, suggesting he's dead. This is the face of a dead man. Why would that be? Why would they have put that on a pot? And why would that pot have found its way into a burial? Because these people took trophy heads. The Mississippian people were taking trophy heads in battle. It was considered a sign of power to own and possess the head of an enemy. It gave you the ability to speak for this individual. And in some societies, the belief was that that individual would be your servant in the afterlife. However, this pot is probably a portrait of somebody who lost their head. You can see he's got beautiful facial tattoos, and his face is also painted. And look at those ears. On the right ear, I can see 4 holes for earrings. And on the other ear, there's at least 2. So they were also piercing ears and wearing earrings. And probably this pot originally did have earrings on it and was placed in a burial with earrings, which, obviously disappeared over the time. But we can see this face of this man who lived along the Mississippi River, probably around 1200 AD. And on the right side, we see a woman, a very strange looking woman. She's got these real spindly little arms, but her body is very large and pronounced. And if I had shown you her back, she got this very jagged backbone that shows on this, very pointed, comes up to a point in the middle of her back. And why would a woman be depicted like this? She was undoubtedly an Earth Mother figure to the Mississippian people. Something that symbolizes plenty and fertility. You'll notice the large breasts on her for nursing her babe. So that plenty and fertility symbol was so important when you're a person who tends the land. Those of you who've been a farmer before know that, your whole crop can just disappear overnight in a hailstorm or a tornado. So many times the ancient cultures had mystical beliefs about gardening and planting. So this woman here is found on a lot of pots that were made at that time period. This is the nicest one of the pieces that we've got, but we must have at least 10 of this woman depicted, always with that pointed backbone, jagged backbone. And in this case, we can see her facial tattoos as well too. She's got sort of a large, wide, smile-ish shaped, crescent shape around her mouth. So was she a real woman? Probably not, but it gives you an idea of what women would have looked like in that time, that likely they would have had their faces tattooed like that as well too. But I imagine that there weren't any women, and actually we know that there weren't from the old days when people used to excavate burials. There were no women who were found with a body shape like that. So it's something that represents a deity, an Earth Mother type of figure. Okay, let's go on and we'll look at the historic period Native Americans. These masks are dance masks, well, mostly dance masks. The 2 on the left side are from the Iroquois Nation. The Iroquois Nation stretched across the northern United States from the East Coast all the way to almost to Illinois, not quite that far, but almost that far. And it was a society I think it was 5 tribes that had similar languages and similar practices. So they relied upon each other for help in warfare, and in times of famine, you could always count on the other of the nations to help you out. They had societies that were medicine societies, and these medicine societies would dance for events. They would actually heal people. The one at the top left is called a false face society mask. you can understand why it would be a false face. It's a mask. It's not your original face, it's a mask. But this individual has a huge smile. You can see the lines on the forehead. They usually depict an elder with the false face. And they usually are pretty nice looking and sometimes a little bit scary, but not as scary as that husk face society mask on the right, the bottom, well, bottom left, right of the label. That brownish colored corn husk mask is a little scary looking. When we first put that out on exhibit, I was like, whoa, I hope we don't scare any little kids with that. The Iroquois Nation members, society members, believed that these were not objects, but they were actually living spirits. The spirits actually were inhabiting these and they were living objects. So one of the things that we try to do at the Putnam is offer the proper respect for these types of artifacts that are believed by the makers to be imbued with special characteristics. So we offer proper respect. We come ask the Native American Commission from the Quad Cities to come in and bless the artifacts in the collection. They've come into the collections and smoked the area to offer blessings to the artifacts. They offer us advice even about what artifacts should and should not be exhibited. I can remember the hospital, Unity Point Hospital on the other side of the river had rented an exhibit on Native medicine, and they wanted to borrow artifacts to support that. And I thought, oh, medicine artifacts, wow. I have a feeling that those are pretty sacred, and I'm not sure if they're going to want these to go out. So I said, well, I can't promise them to you, but let me ask our Native American Alliance and see what they have to say. So I brought them in and showed them which objects I would like to have go out if they thought it was acceptable. And they looked at these pieces while I was very nervously pacing around, and they said they should all go. I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting that. But they said that these spirits of these medicine objects, that was their job to heal, and that they would be happy going to the hospital to continue their healing job. So that was quite an exciting event to have them come in and look at those pieces. Excuse me. And tell us, yes, it's okay to put those out on exhibit. Now, the other two masks, the one in the blue and red paint, is actually a Tlingit piece from the Northwest coast. And I think it dates to around the mid-1900s. It's not terribly old. It's not a dance mask either. It's a recreation of what a dance mask looked like. But with dance masks, as you can see, it's the two on the right and the two on the left and the one on the right, upper right, that there are holes for the eyes. Got to have those holes for the eyes if you're going to be dancing, and it sure be nice to have a hole to breathe through if you're going to be expending a lot of energy dancing. This one from the Tlingit does not have that. So therefore, it is not a dance mask, just an object that was created in the style of the dance masks. The one on the upper right is from Oaxaca, Mexico. I think it's probably around early 1900s, and that's armadillo that it's trimmed with. It's got fur on it, but those gray scaly things are armadillo skin. The dance masks for the Mexicans recreated events in the lives of the people. And one of the things that you'll sometimes see in the Mexican dancing is a recreation of the conquistadors who came from Europe, and they wore armor, helmets and things like that. And that's what this mask seems to be doing too, is wearing that European style armor. So are these actual faces you're looking at? No, but they're similar to humans. Nose, eyes, mouth. Yep, they have all of those. But there's that that step away from reality into the belief and faith. So what did these individuals look like who were probably deities? Well, they probably looked something like humans, but in the belief of the systems of the Native Americans, they always had something more, something special, something different from the humans. So interesting to have a look at these pieces. Terrifying, beautiful. Take your pick. Some people think both. And then we move on to Asia and we see some more masks. These are theater masks. The Noh, N-O-H theater in Japan was associated with the Shinto religion. And if you would go to the Shinto shrines, you'd frequently be able to catch a Noh performance. And these two depict standard characters from the Noh theater. The Zoana, a beautiful young girl, which incidentally is always played by a boy. All the actors in Japan were boys or men. So this beautiful young girl, Zoana, would have been worn by probably to a younger boy to mimic the size of a woman. And look at her mouth. You can't really tell very much, but her teeth are blackened. That was considered a sign of beauty in Japan, was to have black teeth. I don't understand it, but I don't know where a cultural tradition like that would have come from, but it's interesting. And so this beautiful young woman has the beautiful standard at the time, black teeth. And on the right side, we're looking at the mask of an old man. The character's name is Kojo, and he's always depicted as wrinkled and sagging face. In this case, he's got a great big long beard and big heavy eyebrows. That tells you the age of this character. He's no young man. So this character also is depicting a human, not a deity, and gives you an idea again of what people looked like or what they thought characters should look like. But in the middle, we have a beautiful statuette of a beautiful young woman. It's carved out of ivory. This is such a beautiful piece. It's so intricate. The first time I looked at this, I just fell in love. And then I picked it up and looked underneath. And you can just see her toes sticking out. Underneath her kimono, the bottom of the kimono, her feet are carved in detail. And you would never see that when it's on display. You would never know how beautiful it is underneath as well as being beautiful on the parts that you can see. That's that perfection that you sometimes see in Japanese artworks, is that, you know, the ideal is beautiful all over, not just on the parts that you can see. So this gives us an idea of what a very specific Japanese young woman would have looked like. The beauty at that time was for an oval face. And if her eyes had been open, we would have seen almond-shaped eyes, which would have been considered beautiful as well, too. She's wearing the kimono of a young unmarried girl. And we know that because the sleeves go practically down to the floor. When a woman would get married, her sleeves would be shortened. And that's how you could always tell when in Japan, whether you were looking at a married woman or not. So wedding rings weren't needed. You just looked at the kimono to see what the sleeves looked like. Now let's go on and take a look at China. These pieces from China are also very, very interesting. On the left side, you see the Ming Dynasty ancestor and see the dates on that up to 1644 CE. And there's a pair of them. I'm showing you just the female one here. But they would have been on a shelf in a household. Your ancestors were worshipped in China. And so they would have been someplace where they could have been left offerings, because your ancestors, you're responsible to your ancestors. They gave you ultimately what you have, both as we know now genetically, but as well as property, as money, looks, all of that came through your ancestors. And so the ancestors were worshipped for that. On the right side, you see a Tang Dynasty tomb figurine, which is dating as far back as 618 CE, Common Era. And we see what kind of style she wears on her head. We see what her face looks like. And yes, it's probably a very realistic look on her face. Idealized somewhat because, of course, they're not showing any flaws. They're showing that beautiful face, but still, if it's included in a burial in China, it's probably a servant depiction, somebody who also would do your work for you in the afterlife, real similar to ancient Egypt and the Ushabti figures. Well, in China, they put the figurines in as well, too, to help them with the work in the afterlife. And in the center, we're seeing this deified official, he's called. And his face is not very realistic at all. You can't see much about him excepting for his beard and those eyes that just stare out at you. Part of the religion in China was that pretty much anybody who had achieved great things in their lifetime could be deified. And so this individual was deified. I don't know what kind of work he did. We don't know what his name is even, but he is supposed to be representing a real individual. And in fact, there's a slot in the back of this where you can place prayers so that this ancestor or this figure here, this deified official, will hopefully intercede for you to get your prayers answered. So we've got people here that we can get some idea of what they valued in ancient China in appearance. And you'll see both the women on the right and the left had really kind of elaborate hairstyles. And of course, our man in the center has that beard that's kind of elaborate as well, too. So one of the things I always like and appreciate about these are the clothing that they wear. That type of thing rarely gets preserved. So to get an opportunity to see what they wore in the Ming Dynasty is great. Okay, let's go on to Papua New Guinea. Humans depicted in Papua New Guinea are mostly carvings that represent ancestors and deities. And these are intended to be occupied by spirits as well, too, like we saw with those Native American masks. Some of these can be scary. Some of them can be very scary. Some of them are very symbolic, very abstract. And some of them are kind of generic, but you kind of get the idea of what they look like. The far right is a ladle that has a warrior, a man wearing the garments of a warrior. And in fact, the hair on his head is real hair that's been affixed to the top of that ladle. So not only do we have sort of what a warrior would have looked like, but we also have his, maybe even his DNA, depending upon what there is there with the roots of the hair. If the roots are present, we may have some DNA there. The food hook is an interesting artifact because it's always got an ancestor figure on it, and that ancestor is protecting the food. The food was hung in sacks off those two hooks, and the figure itself hangs from the ceiling. Papua New Guinea had a lot of critters in it that would eat all your food if you left it sitting on the ground. So it was really important to have those food hooks that get that food up off the ground. And who better to protect your food, which is a very valuable resource, but one of your ancestor figures. And the gope board on the far left is strictly an ancestor figure. In the men's houses, because the men and women didn't live together, the men usually lived in a separate men's house. They go and visit their wives, but because of their descent, the men were really considered not a part of a family. It's interesting, the mother's brother was more of a father than the husband of the woman was, just because of the way that the descent is figured out. So this ancestor figure would have been something that probably would have been displayed very prominently in the men's lodge. So let's go on and we will see Africa here. We've got the Western Africa pieces here. The one in the center is one of my very favorite pieces in the African collection. It's a Yoruba dance mask, and it's got the pigs on the top of it. Well, what's that about? Pigs are money. Having those pigs and having them featured prominently is showing wealth. We get a good look at what this individual looks like. Again, sort of idealized, but you're getting those facial tattooing marks and kind of a shape of a nose, etc. If you look over at the fertility statue next to it on the left, you're seeing facial features that are very generalized, even incomplete, but you also see some facial tattooing. But the most important part of this, since it's a fertility statue, is the breasts. And so you see these huge pointed breasts sticking out in front very proudly, very prominently, making it very much a fertility statuette. And on the right, you're seeing this figure that's representing a person from the royal family of the Fon tribe. It was common to do statuettes that depicted the royal family. There were several regional tribes that were kingships was the political structure. And the kings always had a good deal of respect and were treated, well, like a king. So this statuette that you're seeing here is probably representing one of the kings, but we don't know which one of the kings it is. Could be anybody from the line of kings that dates back to the 1500s, I believe, is when the kingship started. This piece was believed to be made in the mid-1900s, so it could be any of those kings in that long list of kings. So is it an exact image of what that king would have looked like? Probably not, but it gives you a good idea of what his face might have looked like, or a generalized picture of what a royal family member would have looked like. And then we're going on to East Africa. And in the center, we see a Sudanese dance mask. We know this is a dance mask that was actually used for dancing because it's got eyes cut out and a mouth cut out, giving them, the essential ability to see and breathe while you're dancing. Very generic appearing. You get no idea whatsoever about what the people of that society looked like from this mask here. It's very, very generalized. But look at the guy on the left. You get a really good look at what this individual looks like, and look at his ears. He's got those ears that, like the ear spools, but with the ear spools taken out. It's those looped earlobes that were very characteristic of some societies. And we also see some facial tattooing on this individual as well. And look at his eyebrows. They're almost drawn together in the middle. So is that a characteristic of that tribe? Could be. It's the Kamba tribe, or the Kamba people from Kenya. And he must be a warrior too, because that thing that he has in his hand there is a club used for beating each other. Some of the tribes, or many actually tribes around the world, a club was a standard bit of war equipment. And that's what you did, was that two men would face off and beat each other until one won. So on the right side, you see an individual from the Benalulua tribe, or the Benalulua people. And it's from the Democratic Republic of Congo. Well, interestingly enough, we're working on an exhibit right now called The Colors of Culture, and we're working with World Relief, which is an organization in the Quad Cities that helps immigrants and refugees get settled in our community. And I've learned from them that one of the major areas where refugees are coming from right now is from the Democratic Republic of Congo. They've had a good deal of warfare and upheaval lately, political upheaval. So people have been trying to escape and go to refugee camps. So I think it's interesting that we're featuring this one in our Faces exhibit as well. You can get a good look at what this individual looked like. He's a little bit exoticized to my eyes, to my Western eyes, probably not to their eyes, but he wears this wonderful top knot of hair on the top of his head. And I've seen a number of statues from these people, and they all, or not they all, but a lot of the men are wearing that top knot of hair. And we also see some facial tattooing on him as well. There's powdered red ochre on here that might represent painting of his skin. So he may have painted his skin with red pigments. And that's it. We've gone through the world of faces that you can see at the Putnam Museum. And we hope that you will come and take a look at that exhibit. I didn't show you all the pieces that are in that exhibit. You'll be able to see a number of pieces that you haven't seen. And I think you'll also be interested to come visit the World Culture Gallery in May as well.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing with us. That was just wonderful. I feel like during this time when it's so difficult for us to travel, you've kind of taken us on this this miniature world tour, all from the Quad Cities. And I know, as you mentioned, the exhibition has even more treasures in it. So thank you for sharing with us tonight. We really appreciate it. We do have a couple questions that have come in already. I did want to mention, I forgot to do this at the beginning. We're so sorry that Chris's camera wasn't working for her tonight. She is here though. What does that say? She is not a cat. Was that the cat line? She's not a cat. I promise. I've met her. I've sat in a room with her, although it's been way too long. So we do apologize for that technical glitch tonight. I'm glad you were all able to still see the presentation and hear. So also, I wanted to remind you that if you have any questions for Chris, please put them into the Q&A or into the chat. Chris, we do have a couple I'm going to go ahead and start with. If that's okay with you? All right. Yes. So the first one actually goes back, I believe it was to your Peruvian faces slide. Is it possible for us to head back that direction?
Well, let's see.
And if not, that's okay. I can just ask.
Yeah, sorry, I've lost the PowerPoint by now, and I'm afraid I'm going to lose the whole thing if I mess around too much.
No, that's okay. So the question was just about the pieces, those Peruvian pieces, and what they were made of, what the materials are.
Oh, that was a great question. Those are all pottery pieces. Pottery vessels is what they were off of. So a lot of them had holes in the tops of the heads. That roly-poly panpipe player, or as I call him, the pizza eater, had a second pot that was sat right next to him. So he had a hole in his head and you could put water in him, but there was a channel that went through to the next pot as well too. They used to make these really kind of complex pots like that down in South America.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. Another question, and I believe this was from your Cahokia faces slide. This is a question that says, why does she have the backbone showing?
That's I wish I could answer that. I don't know. It has something to do with the cosmic nature of their religion, and whether it represents stair steps to heaven, whether it represents the bones of the earth, I just don't really know. There's a lot of possibilities. It's definitely a fertility figure, so it could be that she represents the bones of the earth as well too, with that very prominent backbone.
Oh, I like that. That's great. Thank you. We do have another question here. Were many of these pieces from the estate of Charles Figge, the world traveler and art collector, and of course one of the person who helped us establish our collection here at the Figge?
Well, let me see. The Peruvian pottery was from Charles Figge. In fact, he went down to Peru specifically to purchase a collection of pottery for the Putnam Museum because he had heard that there were only, I think it was 3 collections of Nazca pottery in the United States, and he wanted the Quad Cities to have the 4th collection. So he went down there just to buy that for us. So we can all thank him for that. Let's see what else. The African pieces, the Western Africa came from the Kosleriches. The Kosleriches were from Rock Island, and Mr. Koslerich Richard, became an ambassador, And one of the places where he served was in Africa. So he and his wife collected pretty extensively and sent their artwork back. I recently contacted them because I didn't know the story about them being on the ambassadorial staff, to find out where they got this wonderful collection. And they told me the story and said, oh, and by the way, do you want some more pieces? And so as we speak, they're probably packing up some pieces to send in addition to the Putnam. So.
Oh, that is outstanding. Well, congratulations. That was actually another question. Are any of these newer acquisitions, these pieces that are on display?
The Koslerich sent their pieces back in the, I think it was back in the 80s. And they collected them. They had, Mrs. Koslerich had worked with setting up like a store for people in the diplomatic corps to purchase these artworks to take back home with them. You know, she's trying to help the workers, the artists in the country. And so she had somebody who would go around and pick pieces, and being one of the originators of this business, she got to have her pick of the picked pieces. So.
Oh, that's great. Well, those are the questions we have at this moment. So last call, everyone. Of course, I guess it's the last call for tonight, but you all received a link to register from me. So if you have questions that come to you in the middle of the night and you just must know the answers, go ahead and respond to the email with the link tonight, and I will get those questions over to Chris, and she's already agreed to answer those if she can. So again, I just want to thank you, Chris, for this wonderful presentation. It's been such a pleasure working with you on this, and we're thrilled that the Putnam is doing this exhibition. I'd like to remind everyone to make sure to go see it in person. Do I have this correct, Chris, that it's going to be on display through mid-2021 in your Cornder Hall?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Great. And then, of course, we're all very excited to hear more about Colors of Culture when that comes on view. I think that's going to be another outstanding exhibition and such a great conversation piece for our community during this time.
Yes.
And so
thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. For those of you who have not yet been to the Figge to see for America in person, that's going to be on display only through May 16th. So you have until mid-year for the Faces exhibition and May 16th for the For America exhibition. And if you do plan to visit the Figge, we ask that you please remember to check out our website. We have up-to-date information on those current policies and procedures. Oh, and I have an update for you all. April 22nd, that's the date when we are thinking we'll open the cafe back up again. So we hope you're all able, we hope you're all able to come, not all at once, please, but we hope you're able to come and enjoy a meal or a drink in the cafe. That'll be Tuesday through Friday from 11 to 2. All right, so for those of you who are not yet ready to visit the museum or who are unable to visit the museum in person, we hope you'll explore our exhibitions online. I know the Putnam has a wonderful website. The Figge has also created an exhibition-specific website for America, and it's pretty cool. We basically built out the galleries of the exhibition so you can view it online. It's almost as good as being here in person, not quite, but almost. And of course, we hope you'll join us for upcoming virtual programs. Those are also listed on our website. Next week, we'll be featuring artist and national academician Ann Gale for a live artist talk on Zoom. So we hope you can join us like tonight. Next week's program is offered for free, but we do require that you register so we can get that link to you. Just go to our website. So Christina, again, thank you for sharing this wonderful program with us tonight. Thank you to the entire Putnam for partnering with the Figge on this program and on the exhibitions. And thank you to you, our audience members, for joining us on another presentation for our virtual Thursdays of the Figge series. We look forward to seeing you at future programs and maybe even in the museums, both the Putnam and the Figge, pretty soon. We hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks again, everyone, and good night.